When people talk about Turkish television's brightest stars, two names always rise above the rest: Yaman and Demet Özdemir. For years, their on-screen chemistry in Erkenci Kuş captivated millions of fans around the globe. Viewers from Turkey to Italy, Spain, and even Latin America couldn't get enough of their romance-filled scenes. Yet behind the cameras, whispers began circulating. Were Can and Demet's feelings for each other more than just acting? The line between fiction and reality seemed thinner than ever. As the years passed, both stars built their own paths. Yaman became an international sensation, moving to Italy, starring in Viola Come Il Mare, and preparing for the highly anticipated Sandokan project. Meanwhile, Demet Özdemir pursued both TV dramas and a successful film career, while her personal life made headlines with a whirlwind marriage and a quiet divorce that shocked fans. Each step they took seemed to move them further apart, yet their names never stopped being linked. But then, something changed. Recently, during an interview that was supposed to be about his career, Yaman dropped a confession that nobody saw coming. His words carried weight, emotion, and a vulnerability rarely seen from him. He spoke of love, of regret, and of a connection that time cannot erase. Though he didn't mention Demet by name, fans instantly knew who he was talking about. Social media exploded with speculation. Was Yaman finally admitting that Demet had been the great love of his life? The timing couldn't have been more dramatic. Demet herself had just spoken in an emotional interview about unfinished stories and what could have been. Her eyes had filled with tears as she said, "Some people never really leave your heart, no matter how many years pass." For fans, the puzzle pieces were fitting together too perfectly. Could fate truly be pulling them back toward each other? And then, in a twist that shocked everyone, it happened. After years of silence, distance, and unanswered questions, Yaman and Demet Özdemir were seen together again. Cameras flashed, fans screamed, and gossip columns exploded. This was no ordinary meeting. It was the reunion that millions had dreamed of but never believed would actually come true. The reunion didn't happen in a carefully planned studio interview, nor on the set of a new series. It was something far more organic, something that made it even more shocking. On a cool evening in Istanbul, at a private industry event attended by actors, producers, and close friends of the entertainment world, two people who had spent years avoiding each other suddenly found themselves face to face. Yaman and Demet Özdemir. The moment was electric. Witnesses said the room seemed to freeze the second their eyes met. Can, tall and imposing as always, carried an air of quiet confidence, but those close enough to notice saw his expression falter. For a second, the famously strong and guarded actor looked vulnerable. Demet, graceful yet reserved, seemed caught between surprise and hesitation. Her lips parted slightly as if to speak, but no words came out. Fans often imagine reunions to be loud, full of dramatic gestures and immediate declarations. But this wasn't a scene from a soap opera. It was real life, and reality is often quieter, charged not with shouting, but with silences heavy enough to shake the soul. They stood only a few feet apart, yet the years between them seemed to collapse in an instant. The memories of long filming days, shared laughter, hidden tears, and whispered rumors returned like a flood neither could stop. What shocked the few people present was how tender the moment felt. There was no anger, no bitterness, only a raw, unspoken understanding. One insider later revealed that Can was the first to break the silence. His voice, low but firm, carried across the quiet corner of the room, "It's been a long time." Demet reportedly smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with emotion, and replied simply, "Too long." Those two words were enough to ignite a firestorm across the internet. Within hours, blurry photos and shaky videos of their brief encounter surfaced on fan pages and gossip sites. Hashtags like #CanDemetReunion and #UnexpectedTwist began trending worldwide. Fans who had waited years for a sign that their story wasn't truly over suddenly had proof that fate had brought them together again. But beyond the headlines, beyond the viral posts and wild speculations, there was something deeper happening in that moment. For Can and Demet, this wasn't about feeding gossip columns. It wasn't about ratings or publicity. It was about confronting the ghost of their past. About looking into the eyes of the one person who had once known them better than anyone else. The emotions were overwhelming. Ken had built walls around his private life, focusing on projects and pushing himself to the limit in Italy. Demet had worked tirelessly to prove her independence, to show she wasn't defined by any relationship, past or present. And yet, here they were, drawn together once again by something neither could deny. For the fans watching from the outside, it was the reunion of a lifetime. But for Ken and Demet, it was just the beginning of a conversation long overdue. After the initial shock of seeing each other again, Ken and Demet slowly moved away from the crowd. They found themselves on a quiet balcony overlooking the shimmering lights of Istanbul. The sounds of laughter and music from inside were muffled by the heavy velvet curtains that separated them from the world. For the first time in years, it was just the two of them. No cameras, no scripts, no staged interviews. Only truth. Ken leaned against the railing, his jaw tense, eyes fixed on the city. He had rehearsed this moment countless times in his head but never imagined it would actually happen. Finally, he turned toward her, his voice steady but filled with weight. "You know, I thought I was protecting myself by staying away. But in reality, I was just running." Demet's eyes softened. She had expected many things from this encounter: awkwardness, anger, maybe even indifference. But not honesty. Not this kind of raw confession. She took a slow breath before responding, "And I thought I was strong enough to forget. But some things, some people, you don't forget." The silence between them was louder than any words. Ken's confession had been public, his emotional slip during that interview had already set the internet on fire. But here, in the quiet of the night, his words carried a different kind of power. They weren't for the fans, or the headlines. They were for her. He took a step closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Demet," he said softly, "the truth is, I never stopped caring. No matter where I went, no matter how much I tried to move on, a part of me always stayed with you." Her lips trembled as she tried to hold back tears. For years she had hidden her pain behind smiles, interviews, and carefully chosen words. But hearing this now, directly from him, broke down the walls she had built. "Do you know what hurt the most, Ken?" she whispered. "Not the rumors, not the distance. It was that night, when I called you, and you didn't answer. That silence was louder than anything you could have said." Ken lowered his head, his hands tightening on the railing. He remembered that night all too well. The missed call, the message he never returned. A choice he had justified with excuses: work, timing, fear. But standing there in front of her, those excuses felt meaningless. "I know," he admitted. "And I regret it every single day." Demet wiped a tear from her cheek, trying to steady her voice. "We lost so much time, Ken, years that we can't get back." He reached out, hesitantly, his hand almost trembling as it brushed against hers. "Maybe we can't change the past," he said, "but maybe we can decide what comes next." For a brief moment, it felt as if time had stopped. The city lights flickered below, the night air wrapped around them, and two hearts that had once been inseparable found themselves beating in rhythm again. But the question remained: was this reunion a new beginning, or just a fleeting chapter destined to fade away once more? The night stretched on, but for Ken and Demet, time felt suspended. They stood side by side, speaking in fragments, half-finished sentences that carried more meaning than entire paragraphs ever could. The years apart had carved deep scars, yet those same years had also taught them the value of honesty, of courage, of speaking the truth even when it hurt. At one point, Demet finally asked the question that had been burning inside her since the moment she saw him again: "Why now, Ken? Why confess after all this time?" He took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the skyline. "Because pretending didn't work anymore. I could keep lying to myself, to everyone else, but not forever. The truth has a way of catching up, Demet. And the truth is, a part of me still belongs to you." Her chest tightened at those words. She wanted to believe him, to let her guard down completely. But the fear of getting hurt again weighed heavily on her heart. "And what if it's too late?" she whispered. Can turned to her, his expression firm yet tender. "It's only too late if we decide it is." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the world outside didn't exist. No fans, no headlines, no gossip. Just two people, once deeply connected, now standing at the edge of something neither of them could define. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, overflowing with possibilities. Inside, the party was ending. Music faded, voices quieted, and one by one, the guests began to leave. But on that balcony, Can and Demet remained, clinging to the fragile yet undeniable bond that had brought them together once more. As they finally walked back inside, the cameras flashed again, capturing what would soon become one of the most talked about images of the year, Can Yaman and Demet Özdemir, side by side after years apart. Fans would dissect every detail, the way his hand almost brushed against hers, the softness in her eyes, the unspoken words hanging in the air. For the outside world, it was a headline. For their fans, it was a dream come true. But for Can and Demet, it was something far more personal. It was the closing of an old wound, or perhaps, the tentative opening of a new chapter. Only time would reveal whether this twist was the beginning of a love story reborn, or simply the final act of one that had never truly ended.